included at the end of this study, in his video, there was one and only one area that the kids in the United States excelled. That was self-confidence. The world owed them something. They didn't have to work to get it. Whereas the kids in China and India were excelling academically, working their butts off to succeed, the kids in the United States expected success to be theirs. You've heard recently about the Waiting for Superman video, basically showing what inner city schools look like and how parents sign up for the lottery to get their kids in a good school, typically a charter school, not a K through 12 public school, and how that lottery system determines the child's future. Well, what have we done in the United States? We've approached education reform by tweaking around the edges. We've let politics, unions, complacency, changing priorities, the lack of attention to international competitiveness and standards, we've let all of those issues stymie our efforts. We haven't done anything like the lunar program. We haven't put bottom line results in place, had national priorities, held people accountable. We've tweaked around the edges. And it seems that this sort of tweaking is precisely what goes on in most government endeavors. When you try to fix something, you don't fix the systemic problems. The government is excellent at tweaking. Modification here, modification there. And then when the next administration comes in or the next Congress comes in, we change priorities and move in a different direction. Tweaking around the edges, folks, just doesn't work. By the way, I suspect you're seeing a little bit of that in your own industry right now. I'm an outside observer to the space industry. But what do I see? I see a maturing industry that is more and more susceptible to changing national priorities, changing administration priorities, congressional oversight. You've had great successes. The lunar program is a great success. International Space Station's a great success. The Hubble telescope's a great success. The Mars rover's a great success. Your deeper space shots, wonderful. But I went to your meetings today, and what did I hear? Problems about funding, problems about priority. I pick up the newspapers, and what do I read? The James Webb Space Telescope, initially proposed at $500 million, now looks like a $6.5 billion project. Is it doable? The Mars Astrobiology Explorer, at $1.5 billion plus. Can you afford to do that? Seems to me that you're starting to see the same things about your industry that the education industry has been seeing for the last 50 years. People are starting to write reports and studies about what's wrong with the space industry and what to do next. Beware. But I don't want to leave you on a negative note for the education industry. I think there are things that we can do as a nation to improve, and I want to very briefly give you 5 recommendations on what the U.S. can do. And as an overview for these 5 recommendations, I want to tell you flat out, I do not believe the education problems in the United States will be fixed by our federal government. I can give you one very simple example why. If you start to talk about national programs, national testing, national curriculum, you immediately run into the following. The Republicans don't believe in the word national. The Democrats don't believe in the word testing. We have no common dialogue as a nation. There is no common dialogue on this topic. We as a country established many, many, many years ago that education would be a local prerogative. We have 15,000 school districts in our 50 states. If education reform comes, it has to come from the local level, not from the national level. Anything from the national level is dead on arrival. Look at George Bush's program of No Child Left Behind, the most simple, rudimentary examination of results in education to use results to improve this system, politicized beyond belief. A national program just meets infinite resistance. So if you're going to reform education, it has to happen at the state level or below. So every recommendation I will give you is a state level recommendation. And frankly, you as individual citizens and you as independent private companies and you as a space association have a much bigger say at some of the state level issues than you do at the national level. What are the 5 recommendations? One is you have to decide to compete with the rest of the world, which means you have to have a curriculum and an assessment which is internationally competitive. I would challenge any of you in the audience to go back to your state and find a curriculum and an assessment process which is internationally competitive. There is an organization called Achieve. It's a governor CEO organization which has proposed something called a state-driven, internationally benchmarked Common Core curriculum. Memorize the words. State-driven, not federally driven. Governors drive it, not the feds. Internationally benchmarked, will be as good as any country in the world. Common Core, a 4th grader in Alaska, Alabama, Arizona, Hawaii will all take the same curriculum at the 3rd grade, the 4th grade, the 5th grade, the 6th grade in math, in science, in language arts. Pretty complicated. Over 45 states have signed up. They haven't all implemented, but we're on our way in that area. State-driven. What follows after a Common Core curriculum? A state-driven common assessment internationally benchmarked tool. Something like the NAEP test or the PISA test. We will be able to take a kid in any state, in any city, in any school, and compare their results to their counterparts in Finland, in Korea, in Singapore, in China. Internationally benchmarked curriculum and assessment. And by the way, along the way, we should also make sure that a kid that graduates from high school can go to college without remediation. Second one, competition. I believe that the present K-12 system is incapable of changing itself. It's had 50 to 60 years to do so, has not done so. It's incapable of changing itself without competition. Competition comes from vouchers or charter schools, and let me just focus on charter schools for a moment.